chair of Haryana State Chapter of PhD Chamber, and he is the tycoon in education domain. He is also the managing director of Zahoor Education Private Limited and co-founder of one of the leading universities in the country, Ashoka University, and another co-founder of Blacksha University is coming up in Mohali. So with this, I hand it over to Pranav. So I would request you to please come on the stage.
Thanks, Gudarshan. Thank you very much for being here today. Good morning to all of you. Good morning, all the esteemed panelists. Mr. Ashish, for whom we are waiting, he's the chair for HR and the IR committee, PHDCCI, and MD Vic Brothers India. Mr. Rajneesh Singh, right on the panel, chair, regional HR task force, PHDCCI, and managing partner, Simply HR Solutions. Mr. Salil, the Chief Human Resource Officer and Executive Vice President, Maruti Suzuki India. He's a keynote speaker of today's conclave. Welcome, sir. Esteemed speakers and panelists, members, Regional HR Task Force, PHDCCI, distinguished guests, friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen, a very, very good morning and thank you very much for being here today. On behalf of the PhD Chamber and my own, I welcome you all to the HR Conclave. I'm extremely thankful to the HR fraternity who has been kind enough to spare their valuable time to be here with us today. We also have the esteemed guests and speakers. Extend my sincere gratitude for having agreed to address the gathering here today. Thank you very much once again. Friends, I take this opportunity to say a few words about our organization, the PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The PHDCCI has been working as a catalyst for the promotion of Indian industry, trade and entrepreneurship for the past 117 years. In fact, we were founded in Lahore and we are one of the oldest chambers of the country. It's a forward-looking, proactive and dynamic pan-India apex organization. As a partner in progress with industry and government, PhD Chamber has strong national and international linkages for propelling progress, harmony and integrated development for the Indian economy. We must recognize that people are the heart and soul of any organization. They are not merely resources, but invaluable assets that have the power to make or break an organization's trajectory. HR must focus on cultivating a strong employee experience where individuals feel valued, motivated, and empowered to contribute their best. This entails creating a culture of inclusivity, respect, and continuous learning, where every individual feels heard, supported, and encouraged to grow. Additionally, HR professionals need to embrace the evolving landscape of work. The rise of technology, automation, and artificial intelligence has transformed the nature of jobs, requiring HR to be agile and adaptive. We must lead the charge in upskilling and reskilling our workforce, enabling them to thrive in the digital age. By promoting a growth mindset and fostering a learning culture, we can empower employees to embrace change and embrace new opportunities. Furthermore, diversity and inclusion must be at the forefront of our efforts. Organizations that embrace diversity in all its forms, be it gender, race, age, or background, have been shown to outperform their peers. HR has a pivotal role in fostering an inclusive environment where diverse perspectives are valued and individuals can bring their authentic seeds to work. By championing diversity, we not only enhance creativity and innovation, but also ensure fair and equal opportunities to all. Lastly, HR must become data-driven and harness the power of analytics. The wealth of data available to us today can provide valuable insights into employee engagement, performance, and overall organizational effectiveness. By leveraging data analytics, we can make informed decisions, predict trends, and predictably address challenges. HR professionals must embrace technology effectively and collaborate with other functions to unlock the full potential of data and use it to drive evidence-based strategies. In conclusion, this HR Conclave series is a platform for us to come together, share our experiences, and learn from one another. Let us leverage this opportunity to spark conversations, challenge the status quo, and envision a future where HR is at the forefront of organization success. Together we have the power to shape workplaces that foster growth, unleash human potential, and create a positive impact on society. With these words, I once again welcome you all, and I'm sure with the presence of expert speakers, we will have a very fruitful and beneficial discussion in this program. Thank you very much. I also want to take one more opportunity to introduce Ashish HR Solutions LLP, an end-to-end HR solutions firm based out of Delhi NCR, founded in the year January 2011. Rajneesh's professional experience of 32 years spans across consulting, includes the National Productivity Council, manufacturing, he's been at Eicher Motors, Hindalco, FMCG, Gillette and Duracell, telecom, hospitality of Roy Group of Hotels and media network 18. So he really brings a lot of experience across various diverse sectors. Thank you, Rajneesh, for being here. He's an HR generalist with exposure in each domain of HR. His core capabilities lie in culture building, talent management, employee engagement, learning and development, and industrial relations. In his last assignment at Network 18, the group head HR, he was instrumental in leading a HR team which facilitated the company to become a great place to work for 2 years consecutively, 2008 and 2009. His passion lies in culture building, talent management, mentoring and employee engagement. His other interests includes movies, music, travel and outdoor sports. Thank you very much, Rajneesh, for being here and moderating the session. And thank you once again. I wish you guys have a great session there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Panay. That was kind of you. It was too long introduction. I have normally brought it down to a little paragraph now. I think the latest updated one didn't reach the office, so that's a little learning for me. But first of all, thank you everyone for taking out time, braving the rain outside. You know, I have become such a kind of a crazy fellow. The first thing I do whenever we organize such events is to do the weather check. And the rain gods, now you treat that as a blessing, or you treat it like a, you know, there's chaos and Mr. Vegas still stuck in traffic. So there are fallouts and the flip side of rains as well. I see it as a blessing. I think all kudos to PHDCCI team Chandigarh that they have been able to continue this momentum of having HR conclaves year on year. During the pandemic, we took a break, but we are back. Yes, last year we did a pretty interesting one at PHDCCI. We realized the interest is growing, and that's why this time we thought we will bring it to a larger venue. That's why all of us are now at Taj, and it's such a wonderful sight to see the entire hall literally packed, which is what Gur was talking at the beginning, that there is so much of need for HR to come into such regions. As the founder of Simply HR, honestly, we've been working with startups and SMEs. I strongly believe in the power of startups and SMEs in our country, and that's why Simply HR has been from day one. Those are the two segments we have been really working with, and tons of work we have done in the last 12 years. So God has been kind on that account. I have wonderful people today on the panel. Salil goes back to my B school, to my school, and I'm so happy to have seen him grow so well in his career, done so well. Salil has so many achievements, accolades to his name, and if I start reading them, they're like a long list of recognitions that Salil has got, but it's an absolute pleasure to have him, and he readily agreed that yes, I'll be there. So as we heard, he is CHRO at Maruti, Executive VP also, and that's a role he just took up a year back or so. So we've seen Salil really grow in Maruti. So we're going to hear a lot of interesting stuff from Salil, not only in the keynote address, but also in the panel discussion once we get into the panel mode. We have Rajneesh. I also asked, apart from the introductions of your professional achievements and where you are right now, I texted all my panelists in the evening yesterday, please tell me what are your other interests? What do you do apart from HR? You know, HR guys are supposed to be, you know, very cut and dry people, but there is a nice side of all of us that needs to be shared. You know? So Salil and Rajneesh and Big Sir, all of them promptly responded. And Salil had this very interesting thing to say about himself. Driving active motorsport enthusiast, participated thrice in monsoon car rally and Himalayan car rally. So a big hand for a person who has been on an expedition mode. And music, He loves right from Kishore Kumar to Phil Collins, Stevie Wonder to Hemant Kumar. Amazing range. So that's Salil for you. Apart from what he's doing brilliantly in HR, that is what Salil otherwise as a person is. I have Harleen again, a very interesting person. And I realized yesterday when I saw her and read her CV that she started as a lawyer at the Punjab and Haryana High Court and then moved on into HR. So imagine HR has that power to attract people away from their whatever career they might have chosen. So Harleen is one classic example. Harleen again is part of, she's heading HR at Alchemist Hospital and Otis Hospital. And she's again, interesting again. Apart from professional pursuit, she's a talented professional painting artist. Big hand for her. Big hand. That's wonderful on this part. Artwork is being sold in India and USA, so please look up Harleen Quark and you'll find her work there. That's interesting. Her passion for art showcases her creativity and artistic ability. So I'm sure in HR, Harleen would have done some very interesting stuff knowing her other hobbies and interests. I think coming to the whole theme, it's very interesting to realize that the last one full year has been one normal year that we have seen after the pandemic. And so we have been able to get back on the drawing board and been able to really put strategies together. And especially for the HR people, we had let me call it a terrible time because the pandemic came as an absolute shocker and nobody had a history of how to handle things during a pandemic. So all of us learned on our feet. But post-pandemic, I think there are so many now such sessions happening across the country. It is very, very important that all of us really huddle, learn from each other, understand where we are struggling, because there are tons of challenges. If you look at all the 4 themes that we have for the panel today, right from talent, from the business alignment, to talent attraction, retention, to HR tech, and to diversity inclusion, the plates are full for HR people right now. It was really overworked population during pandemic, and the whole work still continues unfinished. So we have an agenda going forward as HR where tons of work needs to be done. And that's why we thought we will get some very interesting speakers, not only from Chandigarh Tri-City, but also the nearest hub, which is Delhi NCR. We must tap into the talent there and bring them here as speakers so that they can talk about their experiences and their organization's best practices from which we can all learn. So I'll leave it at that note. I would want Salil to really share his thoughts. Salil, like all of you know, heads the HR for the largest car manufacturing company in the country. So we can't have a better person really talking about how they encountered pandemic and how things are going post-pandemic. So over to you, Salil. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rajneesh sir, Mr. Gupta, Mr. Rajneesh Singh, the panelists on the dais. It's been a privilege and an honor for me to be here amongst you as a keynote speaker. Today in the morning while I was trying to recollect, in a way trying to prepare for the session today, 3 things came to my mind. One, of course, I represent the largest vehicle manufacturing company in the country. We closed the financial year, with approximately close to 20 lakh vehicles being produced and sold, with a turnover of more than 1 lakh crore, which has been the ever highest for any automobile company in India. We are going to set up a brand new facility in Haryana again, which would be a capacity of 10 lakh vehicles per annum, which is going to be one of the world's largest car manufacturing facilities. We look after close to 45,500 people across the country, which includes both regular and non-regular. And whatever has been the progress in last 40 years, because it is almost 40 years of its existence in India, and now we are looking ahead for another 40 years, and there lies the challenge. And that is what prompted me to really frame up the points or the agenda which is purely based upon my personal experience and whatever we have done or learned so far. Mr. Rajneesh Singh happens to be my senior from the same college. We have studied for some time together. He himself has been a role model for most of us within the HR fraternity. And we are still very close. We interact closely with each other most often offline. But nevertheless, it has been a very, very interesting journey for all of us. First and foremost, I have 10 small proposals to make today in front of everyone. And this is not something which would come across the textbook or the balance sheet or any other document which we refer. First and foremost, as he mentioned about the COVID, and COVID actually came as a big surprise, and more than a surprise, a big threat. But what led to the situation was suddenly HR in every organization became the face of the organization in a way, because everybody was looking up to you in order to answer the queries, in order to resolve the situation. And we all know the second phase of COVID was bad, because it led to loss of life. Nobody was prepared. I have been speaking about it at various forums, and I always say that no one was prepared. Neither the government was prepared, the industry was not prepared, we as citizens, we were not prepared. And we had to face the complete onslaught. But then what was very important was the fact that we had to rise to the occasion, and as I mentioned, that everybody was looking at you. Every individual within the organization, the top management or the leadership was looking at you for the answer. We as an organization had to also resolve and come out with a solution that we are in a situation to handle everybody. We had to set up a disaster management cell within 24 hours in order to look after people. And not only look after our people, because we had to look after another, say, the community which was looking at you, including the government agency. We were trying to bring in oxygen cylinders and oxygen concentrator machines from all across the world. Today, if I look back, I have an inventory of 2,200 oxygen concentrator machines lying in our OSCs. But nevertheless, that was something which was the need of the hour, and we had to, in fact, take over certain hospitals, floors of the hospital only for our control, in order to accommodate people. And we were not only looking after our employees, we were looking at the community at large. We were looking at the society at large, we were looking at the neighboring villages, the government, and wherever the help was possible, it was being provided. And without even caring for the fact that you are exposed to so much of infection and other things from the environment. But the lesson learned that every individual was to be given an assurance that they would be looked after. We had to set up a department, a full-fledged department of disaster management and business continuity, only to ensure that such disasters, if at all it happens in future, we are ready to handle it. And when I say the disaster, it is not only related to COVID or to any medical pandemic. It can be anything. It can be a terror attack, it can be an earthquake, it can be a flood, and Gurgaon as a city has witnessed all the three. So we had to gear up in order to actually look after such situation if it happens in future. What followed next was in fact a different kind of a challenge for HR people, because the complete landscape, the complete working environment and the ecosystem changed overnight. The expectation of the manpower, the people around you also had a different set of likes and dislikes post-pandemic. And then you had to address each. Imagine a car manufacturing company which runs on a conveyorized belt, who are doing a different set of job, and their requirement and interest would be absolutely different. What was important, because the industry at that point of time was facing the challenge of retention. The great attrition had already taken place, and you had no other choice but to address. Then, since people were used to a particular environment for last say 2.5 years to 3 years time, we had to introduce flexi time so that people can still manage their household as well as the working assignments. And the third was that you have to meet the requirement in terms of the younger population, the new generation, and then obviously what is required is to give them some flexibility in terms of their own dressing. A simple solution that you will reduce Friday dressing, that too for an organization which is labor intensive. We all wear the same uniform right from the managing director to the junior most casual worker, but still there was an option to introduce Friday dressing. Now of course we are moving ahead. These are the initial work practices changes which we introduced, but nevertheless what we are trying is something different. There is an intense need to understand that today everyone has to evolve a mechanism where you actually become a listening organization. And that was the main approach which we adopted as a management in terms of how do we inculcate, how do we design the whole system that you become not only the HR function as a whole, but every function, every department, every leader has a mechanism to listen to their people. And of course, there are certain mechanisms, there are apps, people have developed various ways and means. You have a virtual assistant for the CHRO who would be giving you feedback periodically, and then you get the feel and pulse of the organization in terms of what is required. The fourth item for us was looking at the compensation, the benefits, and the way we are looking at the whole system or the network, the environment. Accordingly, we also, and as a practice, Maruti does the benchmark every year. We get the reports from consulting firms, Deloitte. We are member of CIAN. In fact, our managing director is the president of CIAN. So we have the access of the information and the data which is available. And obviously, those things also helped us in order to design our compensation philosophy. Not only in terms of the increments which has to be given, but the complete approach. So it should not be something which we have been following for the last 30, 40 years in terms of what we do. Either it is a fixed amount which every year a person gets, or you change the philosophy which the modern organizations are following in terms of the compensation ratio. So comp ratio along with the benefits, maybe in some case the retention bonus which was introduced for our people, all this packaged together helped us not only in controlling our own level of attrition, because the industry, last year if I have to mention, it was something around 12.1% or close to 13%, we still could manage at 6%. So that was something which in a package, as I mentioned, was helping us. The new normal would also look into the fact that you need some intervention in terms of processes which you follow. And again, processes, what was rightly mentioned earlier was the fact that you have to get into the mode of automation. And automation is something which, again, we all feel that it has been a much awaited intervention, not only in terms of streamlining the processes and the policies which you intend to follow, rather it helps you at every stage in terms of a day-to-day operations which the HR people undertake. One major change, and we were discussing just before the start of this session today, that gradually organizations will have to move from a traditional structure to a newer model of work. And when I say traditional structure, because normally there is a pyramid. The pyramid is managed by different levels, and each level is again defined as per the tenure or the time you spend at a particular level. So you start, say, like assistant manager, and then you become after 3 years a deputy manager, senior manager, and it goes on. But what the tech industries have been already doing, and even including our competition, we also felt the desire and the intention to convert ourselves from a level-based organization to a role-based organization. And I'm very happy to share that we could start with our biggest vertical within Maruti, our engineering R&D vertical, which takes care of something around close to 3,000 engineers all across the country. And this step has been taken in terms of moving out of a level-based structure to a role-based structure, which means we are classifying the complete vertical into bands. And not only bands, we are defining role for each critical level which is there in existence. And everybody is getting moved from a level-based organization to a role-based organization, which will not only have impact in terms of progression, it will certainly define your progression, but more importantly, it would also be defining your performance and your remuneration, which means the level on which you have been identified or you are being promoted or you are moved to a particular role. Every year there would be an assessment in terms of where do you stand for compensation at a particular role in the industry. And then you benchmark and accordingly make the correction. So that would be a big change in a role-based organization where the progression, not only progression or for that matter controlling attrition, but everybody would take care of his or her own career. And they would be clear in terms of what needs to be done, what skills needs to be, because we are talking about the skill premium. So it is no more a level-based or an amount-based increment which one would receive. It would be based upon your role, it would be more importantly based upon your performance and the skill which you acquire over a period of time, and ultimately it is the skill premium which will get paid to you. So this is one big change which in any case we have been talking about it. We took help of the consulting firm and we partnered with them for last 1.5 years before arriving at this solution, and now we intend to move across the organization. So we made the pilot execution for a particular vertical. Gradually we are moving into not only engineering but for that matter quality, supply chain, including HR and finance. The next item for us, and under the new normal, and we mentioned about the fact that we had certain steps which we took during the COVID, but at the same time, as I mentioned, that we are moving from a normal traditional organization to a listening organization. So the need of the hour again is to think in terms of wellness. So it is not only physical wellness, you have to look after your people both in terms of mental and physical wellness. Again, a dedicated function, resource, investment, both in terms of the requirement, assessment, and not only limited to diagnosis but to follow up. We often hear from our people, and again this is something because we are talking about remote working, we are talking about working from anywhere, we are talking about assistance, we are talking about people to be equipped with all kinds of facilities. So the question which came up obviously was the infrastructure. And if you have to operate from anywhere, not necessarily from your home, but even a workplace has to be different from what it has been today. And there are various options available, and again, we are also somehow now looking into it. There is a directive from the management also, not only to improve the infrastructure at the manufacturing base, but all offices across the country. And before I conclude, one major important point which I thought is important for all of us, and it has been something which we have learned from our Japanese promoters and management. I have all through been working mainly with MNCs and Japanese for most of the time, and the management style has been very, very different. They believe in a very simple approach. They do not complicate things unnecessarily, and what they follow is a one-by-one step approach. But the most common thread, irrespective of the situation, is communication. And communication not at every level, right, starting from the leadership level to the junior most position in the hierarchy, in the industry, in the organization, has to be followed. And communication has been one such factor which has helped us. We as an organization have seen the worst, whether it is for industrial relations, the incident in 2012, And since then, there has been a journey, and a journey which has taken us to this level. And we are confident with such approach and the way we are looking at it, we would be 100% confident in taking up or regaining not only the market share, but actually becoming the leaders in the industry. So with these words, thank you so much, and I expect that the session today would be meaningful for all of you, and we will all have a lot of takeaways. Thank you so much.
Panel member who just sneaked in, Ashish ji there, and I had told him, whenever you enter the auditorium, just walk in and just walk up on the stage, no formalities.
Thank you.
And that's exactly what he did.
Yes.
And so thank you very much, Ashish ji. Ashish ji is managing director at Big Brothers, a company that's into infrastructure. जब मेरी इनसे बात हुई तो उन्होंने बोला कि आप लोग सिर्फ और सिर्फ मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, FMCG, media or telecom, those are the industries being discussed, but nobody talks about HR and infrastructure. And so Ashish ji is here, part of the panel. We're going to hear a lot about him. He has lots to talk about HR people. Why are they not picking a career in infrastructure? And let's all agree and understand the infrastructure in the country is improving. And if as HR person, if I'm not choosing a career in infrastructure, probably we are missing some great opportunity. That's a little bit of a selling point on behalf of Ashish ji. Ashish ji, otherwise, again on the interest side of it, painting, music, travel, and of course, whenever I can do welfare for our society, organizations, chambers, institutions, he is present in practically every other institution with Central Board Taxes, PHDCCI, and National Employers Federation. Like we heard from Gupta sir, he is HR, IR, National Committee Chairman. So very, very seasoned professional with us. So we will just kick off the panel discussion. The flow would be fairly simple. We are already at 10:45. So we've got half an hour, but I'm going to extend it by another 15 minutes, take it to a bit of 11:30. Good, if that's okay with you. So I'll have few questions with each panelist. We will then spend amongst ourselves about 20 minutes, and then we'll open it up for all of you. So it's very, very important, and that's a mandate one has given to every moderator of each panel discussion, that please, for heaven's sake, give time to the audience. So please rest assured, aapki awaaz yahan tak aayegi, and the panel, and you please ensure that you grill the panel after panel. So I'm sure you're going to pick up some very interesting questions and ask very tough questions to the panel. That is how we're going to make it very, very rich. Otherwise, if it's going to be just a one-way thing, then there's no fun really. So we'll just kick off this panel. The theme remains the same for this panel. We're talking re-engineering HR in the new normal era. I think Salil has already laid a beautiful base or a foundation for this discussion. The things that I've jotted down there, there's just amazing points that is listed, about 10 points of them. What was the last point he talked about? Anybody wants to take a guess? What was the last point? Communication. Sorry. So I'm very happy all of you were there with him. So we'll just kick off the panel. Hello. Yeah. So I think, very interesting panel in front of you. We have a manufacturing person, which was again during pandemic, like we heard from Salil, they didn't have the luxury to work from home. Some of them were given the option of working from home, but largely the cars had to be made. You can't shift making cars to a home. That's absolutely impossible. We have Harleen with us, again very interesting person from healthcare. Again, one industry which had no respite from pandemic because they were in so-called the most essential services, because the entire story was about healthcare. Ashish ji, again, like I said, brings his own flavor around infrastructure. So I'll start with Harleen first. Harleen, we'd love to hear from you. How did your organization really cope with the entire pandemic? So I'm sure there must have been some phenomenal challenges then. and a pure from a HR standpoint, but I think more important would be how have been the last 18 months.
Thank you, Rajneesh. When I spoke to him, I was very excited to come here because I said, usually when we come for these conferences or HR conclaves, healthcare is generally not very participative. And this COVID thing, I wanted to tell our side of the story because everybody was talking about work from home and how, especially IT people, how difficult it was to get the laptops sent across and to monitor progress. Well, our challenge was how to get. So you understand the first wave, there was so much of uncertainty, even for us. Now, the hospitals were overflowing with patients. So it was not just our usual strength of 1700 people, but it was we needed to hire more people to cater to that crowd. Now, the uncertainty was even in the healthcare, even for the doctors. Nobody really knew what COVID was. So you can imagine, the nursing is the main backbone of any hospital. And nurses are generally, the younger crowd. So the parents said, koi zarurat nahi hai kaam karne ki, ghar aao. So many nurses started going home and said, Mummy, Papa nahi maan rahe. Now HR had to call the parents to convince them, ki please bhej do, we will look after your children. So it was not just that. Now we have hostels of course, but staff who were staying in rented accommodation, people stopped taking them. They said, no, you work in a hospital, we will not give you any rooms on rent. So we had to look for accommodation and then settle those people. HR also didn't work from home, although we were not looking after patients, but we had to set an example that, look, we are also coming to the hospital. Now attrition that time also. Then since healthcare has a wide range of employees, right from the cleaning staff to the topmost consultants. So, the levels are very, very different and very wide. So the cleaning staff is very, very important person in an organization. Same goes for the helpers. Now they are kind of uneducated lot, if you say, the least in this strata. They said, hum to ghar ja rahe hain, hum nahi aayenge. Now who will clean? So it was so challenging. They were not convinced by HR. We had to rope in the doctors to hold sessions to convince the cleaning staff and the GDS that, it's okay, we'll take care. So it was very, very challenging that time. Then, I don't know how many people are claustrophobic. I am. Wearing a PPE kit is so claustrophobic. And we had to tell the staff to wear it for 6 hours. You can't take it off even to go to the washroom. So for that reason, we had to hire extra staff because the night shift got split into 2. So yes, very, very tough time. We all worked together as a team. I think the doctors were very supportive, and we, we tied it over. And very thankful that we didn't lose even a single member in our community. Lot of staff got COVID because obviously you're taking care of COVID patients. But we took care of them. We used to call them, make sure they had everything they needed. So they used to stay together with every, if you have COVID, you can stay together. So yeah, it was challenging, but it also brought all of us much closer as an organization. We, as it is, pride ourselves that we work as a family, and the family just got closer. And then if anybody's parents was sick, we made sure they got the beds. So yes, that worked well. Now, once the COVID thing got over, the challenges just increased. How? Now, the countries opened up to immigration, which two and a half years, everything was stopped. So when the backlog was there, and healthcare shortage was in every country, especially the nursing. So they were started giving out visas very quickly. Something which used to take 1 year started taking few months. So there was mass exodus of the nursing staff. So first that challenge, and once things got normal, then attrition reached its highest peak. And since nurses were going out from every hospital had a shortage. So what you do? You start pulling from each other. So the salary skyrocketed. So we had to change the whole scales. We had to match our competitors. So you know the manpower cost really increased, I think it nearly doubled. So I know during this COVID thing, everybody thought that hospitals are having a blast. They made the maximum money. We did not, because our consumable cost, our manpower cost was very, very high, and we had to pay a lot of incentives to the staff. We did, because you know if you are empathy is the main guiding thing in a hospital, and that's what we teach every staff member. That's what I say. If you are empathetic as a person, work in healthcare. Otherwise, there's no point, because you can't teach empathy. It is something which comes from within. So I think as an HR, we became more empathetic after COVID, because when you see how people worked, it was amazing, very remarkable. You know, young girls, and taking care of sick patients, not really bothering about their own well-being. It was touching, I can say. So coming back to the new normal, first was the attrition thing. So we had to think of ways of how to deal with it now. We had never done campus recruitment. We never needed to. Now we started tapping all the colleges and started hiring directly from them. The second challenge was the quality of manpower. I am sure all the industries face this. Now COVID meant no practical training. Now in the industries where you need practical experience, this was a big hit. So even in nursing, if you say, and technicians, unless you have practical training, you are not really ready for the job. Now we started hiring and giving to the respective departments, because till that time HR was, at least we are hiring. And there were a few months where HR, all we did was just hire. We had put everything on the back burner because there was so much of staff crunch. So now when it comes to the quality, the person who's come with the requisite training was not trained to that level. So then we had to have another section which was training the nurses to bring them up to the mark of a fresher level. So our training expanded. Now normally you have classroom trainings and on-the-job trainings, but we had to introduce then online training. So now when we talk of nurses, we have around 450 nurses. They don't have access to computers. Their job is more with the patient care. So then we had to introduce mobile apps in which we give them the trainings modules, and then they give the test, and that's another thing which we started post-COVID. So the training, of course. Then we always talk about a contingency plan. HR should always have a contingency plan, and then we realized in COVID, yes, how important it was. So of course now what we've started doing is that we have started hiring freshers in bulk. So we keep them as trainees and we ready them for whenever there's a need, then we start absorbing them. So that the staff thing is settled, to some extent. Incentives, yes, now the whole appraisal system and the payroll system, of course we had to think differently now to retain employees. And of course during the COVID, people who really stood by us, we of course recognized them and honored them. We did that for that period. But now what we've done is we have started giving a mentor to each and every employee who joins. I would say even to support staff, like even a cleaning staff would have a mentor for him. This is how we do it, that people who have been with us for some time and who are good employees and good workers, so we give them that responsibility that we are giving you this person, you're going to train this person, take care of this person, till the person settles in the organization and feels comfortable. That really helps because one, if you have any problem, because initial, I think 2-3 months, every new employee, needs time to settle in. And a lot of attrition, if you see, takes place in the first few months. When they don't settle down, they just leave and look for another job because jobs are plenty. So this mentoring system really helped. We incentivize the mentor at the end of the year. Those who mentor the maximum number of people, those mentees stayed on and they're working well. So that's a very good way to recognize people and the employee also feels very empowered that, I am training other people. So this is one thing we introduced and it has worked very well. We also pride ourselves in being a very good cultured organization, and we have most of our employees who have been working with us for more than 10 years. Mid-management and senior management. I myself have been working for 13 years. So I think culture is very, very important, and HR plays a very big role in making the culture of the organization. So if you have an empathetic team, so honestly speaking, I also became much softer as an HR person after COVID. So, being more liberal in giving leaves, being more understanding when people have a family issue. So it was very interesting that during COVID, a lot of spouses of our staff were working from home. When this work from home stopped, the staff who was working had to leave the job because the husband was now going to work. So, the dynamics of every family are so different because somebody had to take care of the children. So, this is what we did, and I think these are the things that work. Small changes, small things you do for the employees. Now, another thing was that the personal connect was missing in the past 2-3 years. Virtual or through emails, how much can you connect with the employee? And we don't have the luxury of having town halls because, everybody's working in shifts. So there are small groups of employees you can collect at one time. So we started that, of course, and reconnecting with our employees because it was actually reconnection. You became so used to just working in your offices and not meeting the employees during COVID or even post-COVID. So now we have these small meetings, and we have HR meetings with the staff, which are very casual. So these meetings are more about knowing the person, knowing the employee, and not really talking about work. So this works as a very good de-stressor for the employee. So we share jokes and we say, oh, you have this, tell us a funny patient experience or an attendant experience. I have all kinds of people coming to the hospital. So it's very interesting, and some of the incidents were hilarious. So what happens is it just, the ice-breaking session, and you're just talking about, and then people are like, oh, this happened with me. Or you had another example, because in healthcare, a lot of people are very intolerant, and there are people who abuse you. They abuse the staff and walk away, which is very tough, because we teach the staff, you will not answer back, you will not say anything. It's easier said than done. It's quite, you can lose your temper very easily. So this kind of worked to de-stress the staff a lot. So we have these things on a regular basis, and especially for the staff who are working in the high stress areas. So that's about all.
Good.
If I talk about the hospital.
No, I think that was brilliant. So we've seen the other side of the whole story. Let's do a big hand. please understand this whole episode of pandemic, the doctors, nursing staff, the cleaning staff. I mean, in a hospital, all of us look for hygiene. One of the topmost factors you look for in a hospital is how hygienic the place is. So for her to emphasize how much they spend time on the cleaning staff down the line, that speaks volumes about the real focus of not only the organization but the HR. We will have Ashish ji now. So Ashish ji, again, and we heard Herlene open up her remarks with healthcare is not heard much about in HR conferences. So we have another gentleman now, again, who will have a similar kind of a start, I'm sure.
Where you don't hear at all.
So I have, let's hear Ashish ji has a lot to share on how infrastructure has been shaping up. Of course, what happened during pandemic, things got stalled or things continued. But in the last 18 months, what is it that you're observing happening in infrastructure? And from an HR standpoint.
Thank you. I'll speak in Hindi and English.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. सबसे पहले तो apologies. बहुत आप सबको I entered in late. I'm coming from Delhi. I did enter जीरकपुर और फिर वहाँ पर पानी भरा हुआ है और फिर चंडीगढ़ में बहुत ही ज़्यादा ट्रैफिक जैम है, तो फिर खैर हम लोगों को आदत है क्योंकि हमारे दिल्ली में भी है, पर वो जैसे कहते हैं ना, देर लगी आने में उनको, शुक्र है फिर भी आए तो पहुँच गए। फ्रेंड्स, जैसे आपको बताया रजनीश ने, आई रिप्रेजेंट कंस्ट्रक्शन एंड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर। Most of us, I don't know if we are aware or not, agriculture is the largest employer in the country, and after agriculture it is infrastructure and construction. Unfortunately, ये एक segment है जो by and large नज़रअंदाज हो जाता है। मैं ये नहीं कहूँगा कि ये किया जाता है, पर नज़रअंदाज हो जाता है। हमारी जो इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ है उसमें इस सेक्टर का बहुत बड़ा हाथ। यू मस्ट हैव सीन ओवर द पास्ट इयर्स वी हैव सेट वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड्स इन द कंस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ रोड्स। वेरी रिसेंटली वी हैव ऑल सीन द न्यू पार्लियामेंट बिल्डिंग, द ब्यूटीफुल न्यू पार्लियामेंट बिल्डिंग, द सेंट्रल विस्टा। यहाँ भी वर्कर्स हैं। सॉरी if I say anything, but manufacturing में तो है ही, healthcare में भी है, पर construction में भी workers। उन construction के workers को क्यों नहीं देखते हम? आज की जो हमारी चर्चा है, हम जो बात कर रहे हैं, honestly this pertains to that segment which is manufacturing and service. I'm also a part of the PhD Chamber of Commerce. I'm in Delhi and I represent HR, and I'm going to be asking Rajneesh to come with us and to go to other cities and try and motivate this, जिसको कहते हैं ना, हमें जरूर इसको मोटिवेट करना है कि जो HR कनेक्टेड लोग हैं वो इस तरफ भी सोचें, अपना इनपुट भी दें। You know, my office gave me a list. This has names of some of the few HR companies, the construction companies, where they have mentioned the HR staff salary. Amazingly, it's only the top 10 companies we can count. Shakurji, Tata, L&T, ये companies इतना तवज्जो देती हैं HR में, HR मैनेजर्स की सैलरी इतना अच्छा देती है, लेकिन अगर हम मिड सेगमेंट में आ जाते हैं तो वहाँ ये नहीं है। Again, it simply shows the importance that is given to this particular segment, which is very, very important. We have highly trained, skilled HR managers here in front of you. You've just heard Salil talk, and whatever he spoke is absolutely relevant in today's time. What Herlene said is exactly how the service sector is coming out, पर हम लोग क्यों नहीं कम आउट कर पा रहे? हमारा वर्कर वहीं का वहीं है, हमारे यहाँ कोई पॉलिसीज नहीं है। I will also share with you, I mean it's not all that bleak as I'm saying, but I have a friend who owns a very big building construction firm. बहुत बड़े builder हैं, based in Delhi. He told me, Ashish, you know what? I have started training women laborers as masons. अब मैंने कहा ये तो मैंने सोचा ही नहीं। वो कहता है, can you imagine, वो जो आदमी है उससे ज्यादा सफाई से काम करती हैं, वो उससे ज्यादा पंक्चुअल है, वो उससे ज्यादा समय देती हैं। अब ये कभी हमने नहीं सोचा, क्योंकि हमारा ध्यान नहीं है ना इस तरफ। You know, we were talking about the skill development. In fact, let me also mention that I feel personally, that's my view, that all the policies in different verticals that we have should be country specific. You know, every country has a typical problem, a typical angle. Like in our country, we have women workers in the construction field. ये बाहर normally नहीं देखा जाता है। तो बाहर जो उनके नॉर्म्स बनेंगे HR के, वो ये एंगल नहीं कवर करेंगे। अब यहाँ पर हमारे, मैं जो अभी आपको बता रहा था, जो स्किल डेवलपमेंट, you know, we have the skill development in construction, but because the workforce is of a repetitive nature, इधर से उधर चली जाती, 45 दिन खत्म होता माता चली जाती है। जो शटरिंग वाले बिहार से आते हैं, ईस्टर्न यूपी से आते हैं, वो एक प्रोजेक्ट खत्म करके चले जाते हैं। Now the owner of the company, he says, कौन इनको सिखाएगा यार? Why should I spend so much of money? Because tomorrow they will not be with me. This floating of the workforce is not normally seen in other sectors. We have this challenge which we should address also. We have just a few companies. In fact, LAT, I was talking to the HR head there, and he said we have our own skill training centers, but वहाँ ज़्यादा लोग नहीं आते, सिर्फ हमारे ही आते हैं जिनको हम लोग absorb कर लेते हैं. That was not the aim which the government came up with when they had set up these different skill training centers. So what I'm trying to say is, as I told Rajneesh, that we all should. I mean, I can also talk about the era after the COVID and what should happen. But what is happening is something I think we should be talking about, and we should address that as well from the angle of the construction and infra. Huge projects. You see the tunneling projects. I mean, amazing. ये कंस्ट्रक्शन वर्कर ही तो है जो कर रहा है. अगर हम लोग आज मेट्रो में चल रहे हैं तो कौन बना रहा है? उसके लिए नहीं हमारे पास कुछ है. So I would request if through such platforms, through PhD where I am also there, we will definitely take it up. We should take it up. That's how
I think let's give him a big hand. Ashish ji has raised the most important point of the most important workforce in the entire employment chain. The workmen in construction and infrastructure, we might be driving on fancy highways today, right? We might be just going through a tunnel in a very smooth manner. How many times does an even little thought comes that who would have been the people behind such a beautiful construction? So for him to raise this whole thing, and this is a very interesting mandate that HR people can take, that how do we build little strategies around the floating population, right? Imagine the challenge of the industry that it's not a guaranteed thing. You're there for the project time. What happens after the project time? So what does HR do in such a situation? Interesting.
There are no guidelines.
And there are no guidelines. So if I were to make a HR manual, for example, for the workmen in construction infrastructure, massive opportunity. Some of the best practices from other industries can be studied, and to whatever extent to be applied, can be applied.
And let me just add on here. Like I said, ऊपर के कुछ top 10-20 companies को हटा दीजिए, उसके बाद आते हैं family owned companies. Construction, you have the mid segment, let's say 500 to 1000 crores. That's the family owned companies who want the systems, but there are no systems.
Yeah.
who want the system.
No, and Ashish, I very much agree, because in our work also we work with so many family businesses. The whole transformation needs to happen so much in those businesses, and a lot starts from the top. So it is so nice to hear from a person who runs a construction and infrastructure company talking about the last man in the line. I think that's a rare thing. I mean, so it's so heartening to hear, that you're talking about that. Yeah, all achieved, all achieved. So I think we are right now at 11. So we will have time for 19-20 minutes for the audience. So if the mics could be with the audience, and anyone has question for Salil, Harleen or Ashish ji, please. Yeah, the mic there, please. And please mention the name of the panelist to whom you're. Please sit down, and you can of course mention about your name and your company.
Sure.
Please.
Hi, I'm Amrita. I represent IT by Design. Okay. I have two questions. One is for Mr. Lal and the other one is for Mr. Ray. Okay. So Mr. Lal, I have a couple of friends who've been working with Maruti, and this is really bad. Can you hear me like that? Am I audible? So throughout the COVID pandemic, I knew of a lot of them who were there at the gate doing the duties really selflessly, right? There were a lot of people who were checking permits, everything. There is this one very important sense of pride in every one of them. Whenever I asked them, I said, aren't you afraid? You're going to get COVID, my God, you have a family, what will you do? And the answer that they gave was, everybody is lit, and we're just trying to help whatever we can. I think that's a great resilience that you built in your brand, and it's a mammoth organization. It's a very large organization. What is it that you think has led to you building that sense of pride, sense of selflessness, sense of holding the brand, even larger than your own?
Thank you so much. I will give you two examples. And before I talk about sense of ownership or sense of pride, it is the sense of responsibility which comes first. And sense of responsibility is something which has been inculcated right from the beginning. And people in the organization have worked for decades, generation after generation, and there is hardly anybody who would leave the organization so quickly. That is number one. Number two, I will give you the other example is that during the peak COVID period, even I had to ask my driver to stay at home, my security chap to stay at home, and we were driving ourselves, because we were moving literally from one hospital to another hospital to find beds for our people. And the person, the chief of medical services, is much elder than to me, as a very senior respected doctor himself. He was the only companion I had. So that actually comes from the sense of responsibility more than anything else, to answer your question.
And I have another question. So Mr. Ray, I've been in the infrastructure industry for 10 years. In fact, I worked with a metro organization in Gurgaon. And I understand when you say whatever you're saying. And of course, I totally agree with the top organizations. If they have their policies, their welfare, whatever commitments that they do for the labor, if you take that out, the mid-sized firms don't really have a lot of that. Given the nature is seasonal, there will be a lot of people coming and going. There is no network amongst them to utilize that workforce so that they have work, they can earn their money and not necessarily have to go back to their villages after every project is done. Can we be doing something about it?
But you are right, अब हमारे कंस्ट्रक्शन में ना यूनिटी नहीं है ये भी प्रॉब्लम है यहाँ वो क्रैप सिस्टम है ना तो मतलब हम लोग अगर एक कोहेसिवनेस से चले सो व्हाट यू आर सेइंग मेरा अगर एक प्रोजेक्ट खत्म हुआ मैं आपको कह दूँगा आपको चाहिए आप ले लीजिए तो पर ऐसा है नहीं यू आर राइट But we have different associations. We have a Builder Association of India. I'm representing the National Employees Federation. Then there's the MES Builder Association. But there they don't want to get into all this. Mera hai main kyun do? Just like that. But definitely we can look into this.
Good. Thank you, Ashish. Next question. Yeah, back there. Please, mic right there.
Hello. Yeah, I'm audible.
Yeah.
Above this side I'm basically from distillery industry. So I have a question for all the respected panelists. Basically, my main question is that we are talking about re-engineering HR in new era, right? So we all thought about and think about the culture, right? So I have two questions. First for employees, second one for management. Basically, we have a three generation right now. One is oldies, like we all have experience in past. Second, yes, all the respected panelists. Second one is Gen Z, we can say that. And third one is coming up, that is millennials, right? So when we're talking about employees, there is a big gap in culture. Gen Z is like they are owner of their own mind. They have their own workplace, their own mindset, their own policies. They don't need SOPs. Basically, they have to work according to their own requirement. They don't need probations. They have to work for 3 months, for 6 months, or for 9 months. If we talk about Gen Zs, they are little sensible than millennials because little oldies, not that much oldies. And third one is experience, like sitting in front of me and all of us. So there is a big gap of culture when we're talking about in all the aspects. So how to build the culture from the HR side, from the perspective of HR person? I'm completely heading the group for the distillery line, and it is the complete scenario right now I'm facing in the industry, and everyone I'm talking about, I'm also coming in the Gen Z model. So what is the suggestion from your side? So this is a major question and very practical question in current scenario. I hope so.
I understand what you're saying because the newer generation doesn't want to stick around for long. For them, if I'm speaking correctly, for most of them, it's the money. They want to jump every 1 year or 2 years to get a hike. So they don't believe in stability and all. And of course, the older generation.
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am. Money is not the bar right now. They need facilities. Exactly. Money is not the bar, but money is the bar at the earliest.
No.
If we're talking about millennials, they just need the facilities. They need a good workplace. Basically, fancy workplace like we are sitting in the Taj today. So if we will provide that kind of facilities, they will be very happy.
So it depends industry to industry. Now,
Yeah.
how swanky your office can be depends on the industry also.
It is depending what industry are providing to them, but thing is what industry can provide is the basically dependency upon the industry. What is their hierarchies, what is their infrastructure budgets, so that industry will not provide, but all the millennials have the same aspects at different levels. So all the industry is not able to fulfill their requirements, but millennials making and raising their requirements very rapidly. For example, we are dealing on the daily basis for hiring new millennials and new Gen Zs. So they are expecting something else.
I'll tell you example closer home. My daughter has just joined as an intern in Mumbai. So 2 months down the line and she says, I'm not liking the work, I want to do good work. You know, this is like very clerical. I said, excuse me, you will do clerical work. You have just started out. What do you expect that you'll get a very big project and then you want to? So they want exciting work and good work. So I had to actually counsel her, you know, it takes a few years. Prove yourself and you will get good work. So that patience is not there in the younger lot, right? Everybody wants a swanky office, everybody wants a lot of perks, fine, but work hard towards it. This has to be drilled down, and I think from home also, parents should also tell. If we didn't have it easy way out, you are also not going to have it the easy way out, right? Coming back to, in the organization, how you build a culture. This is my personal experience and I pride myself, how we built our culture is, we empower a lot. You know, 6 months down the line, 1 year when the person has proved that that person has certain capabilities or skill set, try empowering that person. Now this is what is the main difference industry to industry and hierarchy to hierarchy in an organization. the more you empower people, the more they're going to stay back. Because the feeling of ownership comes from empowerment. So I think that's a very, very strong thing. If you can inculcate that from top to bottom, that works wonders.
Just to add what Harleen said just now, and very rightly so. See, of course, I have examples from my own organization and the industry I represent, because we cater to the requirement of all the three generations. I have people working in the system who have been there for the last 40 years, maybe more than that, ever since its inception. Then we have people at the middle level, experienced, good enough, they have seen both the eras, and the latest young generation. And what is important for us is to understand the requirement of all the three. It cannot be a one-size-fit-all. I'm again repeating, it cannot be a one-size-fit-all approach, and that is what I mentioned in my keynote address. We have to evaluate, we have to design interventions, policies to suit the requirement. The young generation which you mentioned certainly is very intelligent, very sharp, but very impatient. So obviously, and it is not only for the educated class of the young generation, even when I see, because I said I am handling three independent unionized category of people, even the blue collar employee has a different aspirations compared to an old senior operator. Their living standards have changed. Everybody is tech savvy, everybody has an application on hand, and irrespective of their education and qualification and experience, they know what is the requirement. So what is very important, as I mentioned, is to design your own policies and guidelines looking into various requirements of the category of people whom you are addressing.
Yeah,
Hi,
some
good
hands
morning.
that side. Yeah. So we can take one final question before we wrap up this session.
Can I just add something
Ashish,
to what Salil said? I just add to what Salil said. ये generation impatient है. क्यों impatient है? One must give it a thought. Everybody says impatient है यार, इन लोगों को सब कुछ जल्दी चाहिए, yesterday चाहिए. क्यों ऐसा है? हमारी अपनी हमारे वजह से है कि are we at fault the way we have brought them up? We were not impatient. Maybe our parents did not, did ensure that we are not impatient. Maybe हमसे ही गलती हुई, तभी तो वो impatient है ना. दूसरा, what Harleen said, I agree with her. But then, again coming back to construction, हमारी elder generation कहती थी, देखो हम जब साइट पे जाते थे तो हम टीन की छत के नीचे बैठते थे. That doesn't mean आज आप भी टीन की छत के नीचे बैठो. So you have to change, है ना? So that is important.
No, and I think just to add the word that you picked up, culture, I think that's very critical, and this is where when Harleen talked about empowering people, that's important. But I think, I'm sure there are certain challenges in that segment. When you talked about distillery, I'm sure you have your own set of challenges. But like Salil correctly mentioned, for each generation, different application. So that's the way it is. The other thing from me, we were called oldies, so thank you very much for that. But honestly, in my 35 years of working, the amount of discussion around generations over the last 5-7 years has been absolutely over the top. We've just gone overboard, honestly. We all remain same. Honestly, I don't see any generation talk, anything. Nothing like that. When I was getting into job sector, my father was in public sector all his life. The last thing I wanted to do was work in a public sector. Because I had seen his life. I said, I don't want to live this life. So was I millennial then? Probably yes. I'm talking about 1988. But did I talk about generation that my father is X and I am Y? We never talked about generation. I think we created this whole story and we are going around and round and round. Look, opportunities are phenomenal in India right now. People will move. Please understand. It could be oldies, it could be midway, it could be millennials. Opportunities are plenty for people. So movement will happen, attrition will happen, please accept it. Don't get startled by it, oh my god, this guy has left me. Don't get started. And loyalty and all words, please, enough of them. People are there. Give me work, give me money, I am with you. But more than that, I will still talk about give me that respect, give me that culture, and I will stay with you for whatever time I want to spend with you. Thing like what they talked about at the initial, communication, listening. What Salil talked about, his fifth point was on listening. How many of us are really driving the agenda of listening in an organization? HR has to drive that agenda. How many of us have the patience to listen today? We are talking about impatience of people. Do we have the patience to listen is a question that we need to ask ourselves. So that one last question before we go. I'm so sorry. Lady there? Yeah.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, Kajal this side. And my question to Salil sir. Actually, you have discussed regarding the traditional structure and the modern structure. So, level-based to role-based, very agreed and truly agreed with this. And we need to rely on the skill set instead of years of experience. But you said you have access to data because we are working in a competitive market. We have to provide them a fair compliant benefits. For that, we need to market research. But could you please suggest us some authenticate tools or the platforms where we can access such data, because you have the access of such data, because most of the companies I guess don't have. So could you please explain some tools or the platforms where we can get such authenticate data so that we can compare them in the market and can offer the same compensation to the applicants?
Good question. Thanks for answering, questioning the subject. On this topic. Number one, there are government recognized, approved agencies which are only circulating information and data to you, which anybody can access. So there is no restriction as such as far any access to information is concerned. And I don't believe in it, because these days everything is available on your handset. What is more important, in fact, I keep telling to my people also that you will get all the information, you will get all the analysis, you will get all the data, knowledge, everything, but what you will not get is wisdom from the handset. So again, the application of the information which you receive is more important. But as far as data, again coming back to your question in particular, there are various agencies. There are government approved notification channels where one can access and get all the information required, but then these are limited information, number one. Number two, the way we do it for large organization, that we get into the act of the benchmark survey every year. As I had mentioned during my speech also, that we go to Deloitte, we go to other agencies, we go to Oman. In fact, since we are a member of CIAM, we have access to information from CIAM. And CIAM again is a body which will certainly share information to any authorized representative of the organization. So you will still get information from there. And the second aspect of this subject is that you have to be well aware of the recent development which is happening in this space. So Comp and Ben is a specialized subject these days. All large organizations, they have a separate function called only to handle compensation and benefits. So Comp and Ben is a specialized subject. You have to be updated with the latest trends. We have to be updated with the technology which is being used in Comp and Ben, and then filter the data which you receive.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next question is for Halima.
Kajal, sorry, we don't have time. So sorry. Over the coffee, please.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Arvind and Salil. Wonderful session. Let's give them a big hand. I think all of them have really touched upon very interesting topics on which the discussion can really carry forward, continue over coffee. So we'll take about a 15, 20 minutes break, and can we again come back for the next. Thank you so much.
Before we break, so there is a felicitation. So I would request Pranav sir to please come on the stage and felicitate our keynote speaker, Mr. Salil. Request Ashish sir to kindly finish.